Welcome back to Create Space, a podcast that finds joy in the art of storytelling. I am so thrilled to share today's conversation with you. Executive Director of Heroes Academy, Kyle Ellison, discusses with us what it means to take control of the narrative and to write your own story. Now, more specifically, he talks about what that means to a child. Heroes Academy is a youth mentoring program that was built to help break down barriers and to empower our youth to really become the heroes of their own story. Kyle Ellison has no problem shaking things up, redefining the rules, and rewriting the entire script. And now he's teaching future generations to do the same. Let's get into it. Today, we are welcoming Kyle Ellison to the show. Kyle is the Executive Director of Heroes Academy, and I will say that I think you're one of the most interesting, passionate, and just engaging people that I know. You know, I've known you for a lot of years, but what I love is that you're always out here shaking things up, rewriting the script. You're doing things differently, and I think that's so interesting. So first of all, let me say thank you. I'm really honored that you are here today.
Thank you. No, I'm happy to be here. Like, woohoo, excited.
Oh boy, we got a woohoo out of Kyle. That's a big deal, y'all. Yeah. All right. I'm going to start you in reverse chronological order, okay? So eventually I want to get to how you became the person who does everything that you do. Mm-hmm. But before we get there, let's talk about what it is that you do. So can you just tell us about Heroes Academy, what it is, and maybe what its value is to Wichita, or what it provides to our community?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, seriously.
You're welcome.
Heroes Academy, youth mentoring organization, 3rd through 8th grade, boys and girls. And ultimately, in the most simplest version of it is that we help young people find passion. And we really help them find the passion and then simplify it in a really complicated world. And we do it through 3 different ways. When you look at things that we're doing on social media, or if you visit in person, you'll see 3 elements of that finding passion, and one of them are the first thing is providing meaningful life events for them. The second thing is offering an ability to change their life circumstances, and then the third one is opportunities to serve other people. And studies show that if you have those 3 elements in just people in general, but definitely young people, somehow through that combination of things, they find out their purpose in life. And once people have purpose in life, especially if you're, depending on your circumstances or situation, if you can figure out the purpose part, it helps simplify a lot of other things and helps you kind of clear out some of the distortion and the noise that happens in life. So,
absolutely. And I find it interesting that you use words like find and discover and can't remember what the other words in there, but they were all these active verbs instead of saying, teach them this or give them that or do this for them. Yeah. That everything that you do, and I think this is you shaking things up a little bit. It's different than just telling the kids, this is what you should be doing. I'm going to show you how to do it. So tell me about how you empower them to find things out on their own and find their own purpose, whatever that is.
So interesting you point that out. I've never noticed that myself, actually.
Yeah?
So that's cool. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. I think that when you say that, what I think about is self-discovery.
Absolutely.
Is important, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I had to give a speech a couple of weeks ago, and I had to talk about the word empower, and it's interesting. Let me make sure I say this right. When you look it up, empower says to give someone the opportunity to do something is the definition. And I say, to your point of challenging, shaking things up, I think the word give is wrong. To empower somebody, I think all you can do is offer them the opportunity to do something, because if you're really empowering them, then it's their choice.
Right.
And
that's a big semantic difference, actually.
Huge, wow. Right? And so you think about in your life, or anybody that we know, if someone offered you an opportunity, a job, or offered you a friendship, or offered you $5, you have a choice.
Yes. And
when we give or we teach or we, when it comes to empowerment or just making an impact on somebody, it makes it like we're still the one in the position of the power and we're trying to hand it off. And if you're really empowering, you're saying, no, you have the power. You have it right now. And that's the difference in what we do and what I see a lot of times in other situations.
It sounds more like empowering versus, say, imposing on someone.
That's good. I like that.
Now let's go back. Now that we have the foundation. So I know youth development has been a big passion of yours since you were a youth, right? Since you were, 16?
Yeah.
So tell us that story. Tell us how it started for you.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know that it was something I was into. My upbringing was definitely not an easy one at all. And, the truth of the matter is when I was 16 years old, my mom had kicked me out the house and left me on my dad's front porch. And my dad at the time was the treasurer for a nonprofit in town called Hope Street Youth Development. Now, I didn't know what either of those things, I didn't know what what a treasurer was. I know what Hope Street did. But it was one of the greatest. He made me go. He was like, "Oh, you have to go to this." And, I think at the organization, I think they liked how I spoke and how I carried myself. And so they're like, "Hey, it wasn't long. They're like, you want to be the president of this?" And I'm like, "What?" And,
Okay.
yeah, so then we just started doing really cool things to make the community better and helping other people. And we were kids doing it, which was a really interesting concept to me that they gave or offered us the power and a platform. It was so simple to me. I wish back then I had realized how simple it was and that I felt a sense of a calling in that, but I didn't recognize it. So I still went through and did all these other things from then till the time I was 30, but I was shown very early, this is where you're supposed to be.
The seed was planted then, and then it was kind of waiting for the timing to be right.
Yeah.
And this is what's so funny about that story. I knew you did Hope Street Youth Development. I did not know all of the part of that story that I know is that's how your wife found you and trapped you, as she likes to say, is that she literally saw you on TV, I think, for the organization and went, "That guy's really cute. I kind of like him. Wonder what Hope Street is. Maybe I'll get involved."
Yeah.
And then she went on and wooed you, and now here you are, however many years later. Married, 13 years, I think?
Yeah, I'm just
is that
about,
right?
yeah.
Because I think you're 1 year ahead of us.
Yeah.
But, so that's interesting to me, because I always kind of wondered, why was a 16-year-old interested in youth development when you're still a youth yourself? So I didn't know that you were kind of made to go there, but then saw the power in it or the intrigue in it, at least at that time, and said, there's something here.
Yeah. That's one, it's funny you said about my wife, and that's one interesting recruiting tactic.
I mean, I don't know about the ethical implications behind it, but
they put me on the news. Let's see what they were doing now.
It's my favorite story, and she'll probably kill me for telling. No, that's not even true. She'd be proud for me to tell that. She's still proud of that.
Yeah,
I
she
think.
loves that story.
Okay, now you alluded to this a little bit before, but something that I've heard you say a lot when people ask you, why Heroes Academy, why are you into, working with youth development, all of this, is you say, I understand these kids because I was this kid, right? So what do you mean by that? What do you mean when you say you were those kids that you work with now?
Yeah. I think when I look back, or even today, when I look at kids and we talk to them, or even when I'm in the schools, for me, it's really a feeling. It's a feeling thing. It's not so much what they say. Sometimes it's what they don't say. And I remember as a kid with the different things I had to grow up through, what I could talk about, what I didn't feel like I could talk about. And I recognized that energy off of a kid, and it's not that all the kids have to be going through the worst, whether it's abuse or physical abuse or substance abuse. It doesn't have to be to those levels, but I tell people all the time that the work we do, people ask, I'm man, you guys work with kids, it's got to be tough, and I'm like, no, the kids are the simple part. I say this all the time, the kids are easy. I'm like, it's the systems and the circumstances that are tough.
Yeah.
And so that energy that the kids project, I can feel that, and because I can relate to it, and I know what it's like to feel powerless and to feel restricted and limited in life, but to also have this desire and just this innate thing to say, nah, there's more meant for me than maybe what my current situation is showing. And yeah, I just want to help them figure out that window to climb through so they can then run, and get there.
So you can see what they're holding back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you said window to climb through. Like everybody else in the world would say, find that door to open, but not you. You're like, nope, you know what? You can get there creatively. If you climb through a window, if that's what you got to do, you do it.
Yeah, sometimes the space ain't as big as a door. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's a window, you know, or a hole or a tunnel. Whatever it is to get you there, we got to get there, you know, but...
So that's a perfect example of, and I got this straight from the About section on the website. It says, you're not a typical executive and you were never meant to be. And the second I read it, I was like, yep, that's 100% true. So, and I love that because you pride yourself in that, right? It's something that makes you who you are. So tell me how you move differently in this space and what that looks like when you do that.
Thanks. This is a great question. You know, it's interesting you asked that because right now I'm kind of just personally kind of going through a transition even too. I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine, Cameron Morgan, like literally before I got here, and I was telling him, about like, I get that a lot from people, and I do appreciate like people in the same walk as me or the same space in the industry, and it does feel like sometimes I have, I guess, a sense to or the ability to move how I choose to move and do those things. But, you know, sometimes I'll be honest, sometimes I think I wonder like if it comes with a cost too. And I think that's the part people don't, you know, always understand or recognize. And so, yeah, like, I mean, you know, even just from simple things of like how you, like, these are things people comment to me about, like how I choose to dress or carry myself in certain rooms and situations. And it's cool. But I'm like, yeah, but, you know, sometimes like, I don't think I always make the best choice in that. And sometimes I think that I hurt either myself or the organization, which in turn means like, or ultimately these kids. So there's some things I'm like kind of tweaking right now, even, you know, with myself to just to do better and be better ultimately for the end goal, the end result. But to answer your question, I'm sorry. I just had to give that because it's fresh on my heart. I think that, you know, when we talked about earlier with I was exposed to this at 16 and I did these other things. Those other things were amazing opportunities that shaped me into the person I am now.
Right.
And so like I get to be in this space. Like I love business, right? Like business is really my thing, but I love kids. And it's amazing to be in this space where I am in the business of helping kids. And that's how I see it. And I've been through corporate, you know, I used to do music. And so I've just seen different industries and all of those things have shaped me into the person I am. And so I think that sometimes I see differences and, you know, I wasn't the founder, you know, of Real Men, Real Heroes before we made it Heroes Academy, right? So I didn't have that kind of thing. It's not my baby. But, you know, some really cool people trusted me to come in and them hand their baby off, you know. And so I think it took a few years for me to realize that like I have something unique to offer to this space and I'm my own individual and I don't have to like per se conform to the personalities or the stigma of my role, and that I can maybe bring something a little different to the table and then hopefully show other people that they can bring their unique authentic self to the table too. So I don't know. That's just how I see it. It's hard to explain sometimes, but you know, luckily people allow me to be me, and hopefully, what I hope in the long term with that is that not just kids, but even like my peers see that, and that the people that we interact with can say, well, dang, if Kyle is like this, maybe this person is too. Like maybe there's a door that opens up.
Or a window, whatever. Whatever you got. Well, I appreciate, honestly, that answer. Because, I mean, I think you covered a lot of things. One, the organization did for you what you're doing for kids. You know, they didn't say, this is what we want you to be. They said, hey, we see the potential in you. We see the energy in you. We see something there that's, yes, different from what we've had, but we think there's something to that, and we're willing to take a risk on you and let you try it. And so that's kind of one half of it, is that there's this big parallel between your journey as executive director and the kids' journey of finding their own way. But then also the fact that you are willing to be honest enough with us to admit that sometimes it feels weird to be, I mean, being anti-status quo is hard, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that's always drawn me to you, is that I tend to be very, okay, what is expected of me? You know, and in my 30s now, I'm working on that. I'm getting rid of the societal conditioning, but I've always been impressed by the way that you just are you. So to hear that even someone like Kyle Ellison still occasionally has moments of, was that right? Was that what I should have done? Did I move correctly in that space, is refreshing and honest. And I appreciate that you were willing to offer that into the conversation.
Well,
so
cool. I'm glad
thank you.
Yes. Yeah, people have no idea. On that note, like I'm going to something and sitting in my car for like 10, 15 minutes and thinking, am I going to wear, like I'm going to throw this blazer on, but I'm not going to have a shirt underneath, right? And something ridiculous as that, and sitting there for 10, but then having the shirt hanging up in the back in case I'm like, nah, I'm not bold enough to do it.
I'm not ready to go there.
Yeah, but then, and I sit there and it's just me, and I'm like, I'm going to do it. But people don't never see the part before, and then when I do it, I'm committed, and people are like, oh, wow, he's really... But I had to build myself up.
You're literally blowing my mind right now, because I honestly, maybe it's silly, especially because I've known you for a long time, but I literally thought you were just always that confident. Like, I just kind of thought you were blessed with that somehow.
Thanks.
So
I appreciate it. I think it's cool on this point, like if the kids, like, go say, like if this were ever a clip or something, like then for them, because I think, I have an old song I say something about like, everybody stays for the highlights. And so I think sometimes like we get, and especially like social media, right? Like we know each other personally, but people see just like what you want them to see, but they don't see the struggles. So I think it's important for people to share, like even once they reach whatever different levels and stuff, but people should share some more of those so that kids or people can say, oh, we're not that far off, or we're not that different. And if he or she can work past that, why can't I? Maybe.
Yeah, there's an openness or a vulnerability to that. And that's always a fine line, because, there's also the opposite side of people who air all their dirty laundry out, and you don't want to go that far.
No,
so, but there's something to what you're saying for sure. Now, you mentioned a second ago that you started as executive director of Real Men, Real Heroes, right? So that's what the organization was. Then your baby, it went from their baby to your dream of becoming Heroes Academy.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. I remember us kind of talking about it, and it was a big deal. I mean, it's the core values, of course, are the same, but it's wildly different than what Real Men, Real Heroes has been. So talk to us about that vision. What made you say, yes, this is the direction that I think we need to go, and what gave you the confidence to pursue that big of a rebrand?
Yeah.
And what is the rebrand, I guess we should say, too?
Yeah, no, that's cool. Heroes Academy, the biggest or one of the largest differences that it's boys and girls versus it just being boys. And then in addition to that, we dropped the high school component and just made it 3rd through 8th grade. And then we partnered with an amazing organization called Rise Up for Youth, who has a very strong presence in the high schools and with high school kids. And if anybody, is in our space, it's difficult what you would put together from a programming standpoint, branding and marketing for an 8-year-old, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old, and what you put together for a 16, 17, 18-year-old are like really drastically different things.
Absolutely. Whole different places in life.
Absolutely, right? The conversations are different. Like what appeals to you is different. And so first starting out with that, dropping the high school program, was just a matter of, you going out to funders and partners and investors, and people are like, what's the difference? And you're like, you spend, and I know for me personally, I spent the first 2-3 years trying to really combat the similarity. Well, here's why we're different, and here's what they do versus what we do. And then at some point, it was during COVID, it was like, well, man, maybe like versus that fight, like it's a constant everyday battle. It's like, well, maybe like maybe there's maybe it'd be easier to just accept it.
Right.
And
embrace it.
And so that's where
getting so excited he's smacking his microphone.
I know. That's where those conversations took place. And then from the name and moving it to boys and girls, it just took when the team we were looking at our programming and we were like, the stuff that we're offering young people is not exclusive to boys. Like we didn't feel like anything in the program was like, this is a boys thing, and we were like, well, why wouldn't girls could benefit from this too? And then for me personally, being somebody who, I grew up with just my mom and my sister, and then now to be, married, my wife and a daughter. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, I never claim to be able to relate and see the world through a woman's eyes, but I think I have a really unique or appreciation and for the perspective of women, because I've always been around women and seen things that women also go through.
Right.
And it can be a hard, cruel world for women, no different than a black boy, or black men. And not to say it's equal or anything like that, but it's like the things we're teaching and why would they not, be able to benefit from this? And I think one thing that's really unique about us is that we don't separate, the kids either. Like, it's not like we have the boys over here and the girls over here. We do everything together. And I have my own personal theory and thoughts, and no studies or nothing, but I tell people this. I'm like, obviously we all know domestic violence is really high and divorce rates are really high. And I just think about outside of like school and maybe like band and stuff, like a couple extracurricular activities, boys and girls are always separated.
It's true.
You know, and then in school, like, you're not supposed to really talk, right? So then I think about, I'm like, so we spend all our lives kind of siloed off, and then at some point we're supposed to come together and just make it work in this one household, and I'm supposed to understand how you think, and I was taught this growing up, or you were taught that growing up. And so I just think, that maybe there's an opportunity to have more things together, and maybe we can hope to, or maybe we can help. That's what I really want to say, help those numbers come down and just help relationships between people. Because I think the biggest thing I'd say besides boys and girls is that we just see it as a human element. We're just helping people and helping kids. Like, whatever people want to get into like classifications or identification and things like that. And I'm like, man, we just want to help kids, and help them become good people and, just have the best life they can have.
So could you share some stories with us, or moments or things that rise to the top of your mind when you're thinking about the success of your time here, and just any specific moments with kids that have made you go, yes, this is, I'm in the right place?
Yeah.
I'm sure you have lots to choose from there.
Yeah, no, it's cool. There are, but I got a couple that so we moved. So when I first came, the organization worked out of Chester Lewis Academy, which ironically was where I went to high school, but it was Northeast Magnet at that time. And so when I first got the job, my office was in my old high school. It was kind of a mind warp for me,
Some nostalgia there.
Yeah. But I didn't love high school, so, it's,
maybe not good nostalgia.
But, I remember, so we left there, and now we're downtown. We office downtown. Mm-hmm. And one of my, coolest moments to me was, so if you grow up here, and especially if you grow up similar to how I did, like a lot of people, for various reasons, have the mindset that downtown Wichita is not for you. Like, you can't go there. It's not, whether it's race or whether it's, you're not a social status enough, type of thing. And so when we moved downtown, I remember riding down the elevator with one of our kids and him. There's two kids actually in two different scenarios, but one's like, man, I've never been down here before. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, my mom has no reason to come downtown. And so it's really cool. Like, oh, now she does, right?
Yeah.
And then another kid who we are in the building, he's like, is this ours now? And I'm like, yeah, and like the excitement, because like now what I felt from that moment was, right now he had this sense of ownership, in a piece of downtown, in a place where perception is we're not supposed to be there, and so I just really, love like that, and opening up people's minds and opening up opportunity, for things that we just feel isn't possible, and when these things happen, what I see, this is the truth, I see, you talked earlier about like I was these kids, I just see various versions of myself receiving, there's that quote cliche, be somebody for the world, or be what you didn't have when you were growing up or whatever.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. I don't see it that, like, I don't operate under that, but I can say when we do some of the things we do, when I see the kids' reactions, I just see different versions of myself, getting those experiences and things. Horseback riding, when we take the kids to do that, they've never been on a horse before, scared. I mean, obviously, like, it's a big old animal, but then they're on it, and they're so brave. Like, I don't care. I don't know if somebody would have gave me that opportunity. I think I'm sure I had opportunities. I didn't do it. I was scared. I didn't get on a horse till I was 30 years old.
That's right. I remember you telling me about that. You were an adult when you first did that.
Yeah. So these kids are just brave, and things that have something, in my opinion, if you're fearful about something and then you conquer it, then it's like, well, what other fears can I conquer? You know what I mean? And
It's a launch pad almost.
Yep. So those are just a couple examples, but yeah.
You know, and to go back to something that you said earlier, you said, you know, that Chester Lewis was where you went to high school. And in the phrasing there, you didn't say, like, that was my high school. You said, that's where I went to high school. Mm-hmm. And to take that comparison of how you felt versus, is this ours now? In realizing, you know, that kid's never going to say, oh, this is where I went to, you know, my mentorship program. They're going to say, this was my mentorship program. This was mine. This is where I grew up. This is where I, you know, and so again, semantic differences, but I can feel the difference in that terminology. And I feel like that's what you felt from that kid, that there really was a sense of ownership that you didn't have, that many of us didn't have, right? Yeah. That, again, it was the adult's place, and then the kids went in and got the wisdom and left. And this is the kids' place where the adults are learning just as much as the kids are.
Absolutely. I like that you picked up on that. That's cool.
So, okay, so for people listening who might be intrigued, might be interested, might be just sitting here thinking, yeah, I see the need. I have an urge to help in some way, whether that's through Heroes Academy or in some other capacity. What advice or guidance would you have for someone to get involved in youth development in the Wichita kind of metro area?
Yeah, I think if someone's driven to that, you know, they should. And there's so many opportunities, there's so many organizations. I'd say that one way, you know, the school district first, like just first and foremost, I mean, teachers and they need subs. And, you know, if you have a desire to, you know, and especially if you come from a demographic where they don't see a lot of people that look like you,
right,
then like you should definitely do it, because it's just big. You know, these kids, when we go into these schools, and, you know, our volunteer base is a wide range now because it's men and women, you know, and so, you know, when you go into these schools and these kids see somebody that looks like them or that they identify with for whatever reason, it changes their whole day. And people don't realize like how much impact that just has on behavior and how much they're engaged in the classroom and their grades and things like that. So school district. But then outside of that, I think that the number one thing I'd say if someone wanted to get involved with youth, you know, with a youth organization, is finding one that's values really align with them personally, because it's not enough to just be like, oh man, I love what I see on social media with Heroes Academy. I want to go there. You know, it's not just that. You know, right. We've seen where people come and like they don't realize how much work goes into it. You know, one of our favorite things that we heard from a parent is how which I thought that they felt was a separation between us and other organizations, how thoughtful that we are. Like we're, and I loved it because I was like, wow, I never would have. I knew that, but for someone to take what we do as a parent and be able to say to us, like, you can just tell you guys put so much thought into everything that these kids are doing, right. And we do, and our values and the principles, the things that matter to us, but that might not align or matter to you as a volunteer. You know, or you might like, oh man, like I love what they do, but I'm not trying to put this much effort into it. You know, and that's okay, right? Yeah. But I say to find, you know, look at organizations and even beyond their mission statement, like look at their values and their principles, and even have a conversation with the staff that works there at these different places, and then figure out where you best fit. You know, I think with us, I'd say probably, from what our people see us as, and we're fine with that. Like we're different. Like we think different. We like to move different. We do different. We don't try to be status quo. And you know, if that's for some people, that's not, you know, the road or the car they want to get into. And again, that's okay. But there's other cars that fit them. And so I just think it's about aligning yourself personally to an organization that mirrors you, you know, at home, you as an individual.
You know, and as you're saying that, I'm realizing that I want to ask you this question, which I didn't actually have on my list. But, you know, we've been talking a lot about you and your leadership and your the way that you got where you are and all of that. But I would be remiss not to mention your team and have you talk a little bit about them, because I know that you are, again, very thoughtful and very intentional about who you bring on with you. And I have heard you say many times when I've complimented you on something, you're like, well, hey, that was actually so-and-so, or that was so-and-so. So tell me about the other people besides yourself that make Heroes Academy what it is.
I appreciate that. No one ever asked that, you know. People always think that it's just, you know, like it's the one person.
Yeah.
And earlier when you asked me something I was gonna, and I just chose, because sometimes my team would be like, did you have to? So I actually just chose not to earlier. But yeah, I mean, you know, first you got Janice, who she's now our director of operations. She started out as a part-time program coordinator and administrative assistant, and then went program manager to now director of operations and slash, or in parentheses, director of youth development, if you will. But you know, we came in, you know, this month is my 5-year anniversary actually
Wow.
of the organization. Yeah. And so we came in about the same time. She came in probably 4 months after me. And so a lot of this, like, I feel like we built a lot of this together, you know, with obviously like support, like the board and different people. But so Janice, I mean, a lot of the stuff you see, the creativity in our programming and the experiences these kids are getting, you know, she came up with that stuff. Or we came up with some of the things collectively, but majority of it really was her. And then one of our mentors and a staff on at our organization, Bobby Bell, you know, he's the one you'll see at most of the schools or out at community day events. And, you know, the thing about him that's cool is like he really lives this. Like it doesn't have to be Heroes Academy related. You can go somewhere and you'll see him volunteering his time or him working with the kids. And I mean, we've seen a lot of turnover or just, you know, just because life. But he's been a constant, which is amazing. And then recently we brought on Marion, who started out at front desk, and now she's like doing a lot of the leg work and being hands-on in the development and the programming of these kids. And I definitely hope that she intends to stay on long-term as well with us. But yeah, it's 100% a collective effort. And then the volunteers, the people who do have the time to give to these kids in school and just pour back in. You know, the two largest components, to be honest, if I weren't here, this organization could still exist, you know, and the two important parts are that you have the mentors, and you got to have the mentees. You know, the rest of it can kind of, you know, not be there. Obviously, guidance and direction helps and stuff like that, but it's 100% a team effort for sure.
Awesome. Thank you for talking about that, because I feel like there have been many times in our history together that I have brought up something about Heroes Academy and you have diverted to, well, that's the team. And I love that about you, and I think it's great that you see it that way. That I've noticed that you've answered a few of my questions by saying, well, what we do, rarely is it I. It's almost always we. And I think that's just a mind shift that, or a mindset rather, that you have that is really cool and probably does build a strong team. Because when you see the person at the top being all of it, then if that person leaves, if anything happens, you don't have the ownership, you don't have the buy-in, you don't have the brilliant ideas coming from the workers, right? The people who are making it happen. So I think that's cool to hear you talk about. And I've heard you talk about Janice a billion times about that she's just brilliant and does so much amazing work. Yeah. So we've had kind of a robust conversation so far, but I would love to ask you if there is anything additional that you would like to add before we close up, anything that people cannot stop listening to this episode without hearing about you or about Heroes Academy or about any of that, anything that you just really want to make sure that you share.
Yeah, I think that just for people to understand that, because everyone relates to this part, and this was something, I guess, to go back to the Heroes Academy and our mindset, you know, no matter who you are, where you're from, whatever walk of life, like everybody's been in a situation once or maybe more than once at some point in their life where they had to become the hero of their own story. And that's what we do with these kids. It's not a bunch of men and women coming into their lives to save them. We really believe that the kids intrinsically already have the superpowers necessary to be successful, and we treat it like X-Men, and we're just helping them develop their powers, with the hope that they use them for good, but for them to save themselves. Like, we're nobody's saviors. Everyone's like, we're not perfect. We don't try to pretend to be something that we're not. But we do know a little bit about helping kids become the best versions of themselves and then them pursuing their journey. It's not our journey. We're not, oh, you got to do it this way or that way, college or military, or all these are options and all these are available to you. And you have it in you to be successful in those things. So if you identify with that and you understand, like, you have to be the hero of your own story sometimes. Support us, whether it's volunteering, whether it's contributing and giving, to us as individuals and financially, it's all a big help.
Yeah, join us.
Join us.
Right?
That's the slogan.
I know it. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been awesome to have you here. I appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, and I am just really honored that you came to talk to us.
Well, I'm honored that you allowed me to come. And, it's truly a privilege. I really mean this. I actually, sometimes I'm like, why people don't hit me up like to come to speak at things. So when people do, I really value it, and I appreciate it. And thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kyle, for the thoughtful and candid conversation, and thank you to every single one of you who are listening. This wraps up episode 20 of the Create Space podcast. 20. I can hardly even believe it. So if you're out there listening, please do me a favor if you wouldn't mind. Take a minute just at some point this week when it fits into your schedule and share this episode with somebody you know. Whether that is sharing the episode post on Facebook or Instagram, or maybe you text the episode link to a friend of yours or a family member. If you are enjoying Create Space and you have a little time and would be willing to share it, I would be so grateful. And as always, I'll see you back here, same time, same place next week on Create Space.